I'm pretty sure that you are familiar with this painting. Titled The Starry Night, it's one of Vincent van Gogh's best-known works. It depicts the scene from his bedroom window at the Saint Paul de Mosole mental hospital where he stayed at the time in June 1889. Just 6 months earlier, he had a complete mental breakdown while he lived in Arles, southern France. It's the infamous story in which he cut off part of his left ear in a rage, a topic I discussed thoroughly in my video titled "This Painting Made Vincent van Gogh Snap." Like several other of his paintings of the final years of his life, there's a lot more to the Starry Night than what meets the eye at first glance. Was this really the view he saw from his bedroom? Did he accurately depict the night sky? And did this painting serve as an omen to this tragic fate just over a year later? Let's take a closer look at Van Gogh's masterpiece so you can understand exactly why it's such a mesmerizing work of art. I'll also share Vincent van Gogh's own thoughts about this painting. These weren't as flattering as the descriptions of most art enthusiasts, and there's a particular reason for it. To understand the painting, we need to pick up the story right after his mental breakdown during the final weeks of 1888. Paul Gauguin's visit made him completely lose his mind, after which he was hospitalized in the hospital of Arles, where he lived. He spent quite a long time there, and although we all know Dr. Gachet, the man who treated Vincent during the final months of his life, he was in the care of another doctor there. The man who treated Van Gogh in Arles was Dr. Felix Rey, a 22-year-old intern at the time. According to Vincent's letters, we know that he deeply cared for the well-being of his intriguing patient. As a gift, he painted a portrait for Dr. Rey, but he didn't like it and ended up using it to fix his chicken coop. Today, this distinctive portrait is valued at over $50 million, quite the price for a piece that once held chickens in place. While Vincent was in the hospital, about 30 people from Arles signed a petition to have him removed from their town. They referred to him as Le Fou Rouge, or the Red Madman. His yellow house was closed by the police because of this, and he voluntarily left Arles in May. Shortly after, Vincent checked himself into the mental asylum at Saint Paul, the place where he painted the Starry Night. This was still in southern France, as Saint-Rémy-de-Provence is located merely 30 kilometers or 19 miles away from Arles. His mental health never really fully recovered during this period, and for the rest of his life for that matter. This is very much reflected in The Starry Night, a painting that he completed in June 1889, about a month after he arrived at the mental hospital. Like most of his paintings, it features long, bold brushstrokes. The moon and stars emit the type of flickering light that makes his paintings so hypnotizing. The view of the mountainous landscape is partially obscured by tall cypress trees on the left. On the right side of the painting, in the distance, we see a village that initially appears to be Saint-Rémy-de-Provence. The sky is illuminated by a crescent moon in the top right corner, and a mysterious star, which Van Gogh referred to as the morning star, shines brightly next to the dark trees. According to a study conducted at the University of California, which recreated the morning sky as it appeared in June 1889, he depicted it pretty accurately. The Dutch artist was a post-impressionist painter who loved to paint what he could perceive, preferably what his easel set up in nature. At the mental hospital, however, he wasn't allowed to paint in his room, which was situated on the second floor of the building. He had a studio on the first floor, but the view we can admire in the Starry Night is that out of his second floor bedroom window. It's likely that he made sketches in his room, which he then used to accurately depict the night sky during the daytime. When you look closely at the building of the former mental hospital today, you can see that the windows have bars, an element that Vincent rightfully didn't include. The overall view out of his window isn't exactly accurate as well, as he wouldn't have been able to see Saint-Rémy. The fact that this is an imaginary view of the village is highlighted by previous versions he made from his bedroom view. The first version, which is titled Landscape from Saint-Rémy, is a pretty accurate representation of what he saw out of the window. He also made an accurate sketch that shows the village, but this was made way up high in the mountains. Although it was in plain sight, he left out the wall that enclosed the compound of the mental hospital. Just beyond this wall, which enclosed the wheat field, were cypress trees. This type of tree is associated with death in Mediterranean countries. The fact that he exaggerated their size immensely therefore might have a symbolic meaning. Although he already gave up on his religious beliefs, the painter contemplated the existence of an afterlife in one of his letters. His words sounds a bit eerie considering what happened a year later. He stated that It would account so much for the terrible things if life had yet another hemisphere. Hope is in the stars. Right next to the large, black cypress trees, you can see a bright star. The Dutch painter didn't know this, but this was actually Venus, which was visible in this location in southern France at the time. Although all the stars are pretty accurately depicted, the moon wasn't crescent, but waning gibbous at the time. For some reason, he decided to depict it as such, even though he intended to paint it truthfully at first. And this brings us to why Vincent van Gogh didn't like the Starry Night. Not to say that he actually hated it. Unlike many of his other paintings, he only mentioned it briefly a couple of times in his letters. In June, the month it was painted, he said that he completed a starry sky, and that was about it. It came up once again when he talked about another batch of paintings he was going to send to his brother Theo. The Night Study, as he called it, was one of the 3 paintings of that batch that he didn't send so he could save money. The third and final time he talked about it was in a letter to his friend, fellow painter Émile Bernard, saying it was a complete failure. Today, the Starry Night is arguably one of his most famous and best known paintings, so why did Van Gogh dislike it this much? It's not because of the stars, that's for sure. He used the same starry sky in 2 of his other paintings. These are titled Starry Night over the Rhône and Café Terrasse at Night, both world-famous paintings as well, completed in late 1888. In my opinion, the true reason goes back to the incident with Paul Gauguin in December of 1888. Both men quarreled frequently, and that's partially because they looked at creating art differently. Gauguin believed in painting from memory and imagination, while Vincent only believed in painting what he could perceive. Despite this notion, Vincent tried to paint from memory on several occasions, but it never worked out the way he intended. I think that's why he considered the Starry Night to be a failure, as it went completely against his artistic ideals. The event that landed him in the mental asylum was still fresh in his mind, and he had a serious mental breakdown once again in July 1889. This was the month following the completion of the Starry Night, which features dark cypress trees reaching for the stars above. It's simply a stunning work of art that just might give us a peek into the mind of a troubled genius. So what happened to the painting after Van Gogh initially refused to send it to his brother Theo? Well, he never held on to painting, so he eventually sent it with another batch on September 20, 1889. His wife Johanna ended up owning it after Theo died in January 1891, which was not too long after Vincent's death. She sold it in an auction in the year 1900, but for some reason ended up buying it back just a few years later. Between 1906 and 1938, the Starry Night was owned by a woman named Georgette van Stolk from Rotterdam in the Netherlands. She eventually sold it to the world-famous modern art dealer Paul Rosenberg, and he sold it to the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. After this extensive trip, the Starry Night has been part of this immense museum in New York since 1941 and has been one of the collection's most fascinating paintings ever since.